Because of our backgrounds, we've been told that healing will look spiritual, that if we have truly healed, then we'll be back in church.
Yeah.
We'll be doing all the things that we've been told to do our whole lives. We will be more spiritual. And I realize that does not define healing. Healing is developing a secure sense of self in who I was created to be, and to have the tools and the agency to make my own choices, and to have peace in the midst of chaos.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Broken to Beloved podcast. If you're looking for compassionate conversations that provide practical resources to move toward healing and wholeness, this is the place for you. Today, I'm talking with the team from the Religious Trauma Network that includes Rebecca Drumsta, David Rubelid, Luke Renner, and Janine McConaughey. Some of those names you may be familiar with as previous summit guests, and some of them will be new to us. The Religious Trauma Network's mission is to offer comprehensive information, resources, and support for individuals recovering from religious trauma while raising awareness and equipping professionals and organizations to create safe, trauma-responsive spaces inside their faith or healing communities. And so, here's my fun conversation with our new friends at the Religious Trauma Network. Everyone, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
People can't really see because this is an audio-only podcast, but I've got Rebecca Drumsta, Janine McConaughey, David Rubelid, and Luke Renner. This is our first time with 4 guests at the same time, so it's going to be fun herding cats as we talk over each other constantly. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation, officially with the Religious Trauma Network, but more importantly with 4 individuals who each have their own story that have led to this point. So I would love to start for our listeners just with a short introduction in case they're not familiar with you or for your work. Janine, can we just start with you?
So Janine McConaughey, I hail from south of Seattle, and I'm in Seattle right now. My husband is in the hospital. I hope when this airs that we will be out of this hospital. I'm retired, which is no, that it doesn't really work, but I got involved. I went on a healing journey, and I've spoken at a couple of Brian's conferences. I wrote 4 books, the latest of which is Trauma in the Pews. And I was on the board for the Attachment and Trauma Network and for board president for 2 years. And I teach for Tabor College in neuroscience, or master's in education in neuroscience and trauma. And so everything I do kind of focuses around trauma and healing. Healing is the main thing. So that's just a little bit about me.
Hello, I am Rebecca Drumsta. I am from Texas girl born and raised. And I grew up in kind of your traditional white evangelical family. We were independent fundamental Baptist. And I often say that 4 different religious cults impacted the foundation of my life, which is true. Before I was 18 years old, 4 different religious cults had really spoken into my world, into my memories. And so, I was homeschooled. I was in the IBLP program. Many people have heard of that through Bill Gothard. And that's where I got my start. A good little Southern girl with big hair and all the fundamental evangelical everything thrown at me. And so it took many years of deconstructing, and that's when it started. When my daughter was born is when deconstruction organically hit for me. It wasn't anything that was a trend. This was almost 16 years ago. Nobody had heard of the word deconstruction. It was questioning your faith back then. And I was on my own. I didn't have any resources. I didn't have any help. There were no books that I could find. The algorithms with Google and Facebook or whatever weren't set to help me be able to find what I needed to find. And that's where it all began. It was, I want to do things differently for my family, for my child. And something was wrong. I just knew it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so that's where my story began, how I grew up, what led me into this space of whatever we want to call it today. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm an author, I do consulting and life coaching. and all around religious trauma, spiritual abuse, identity. I was a CEO of an international nonprofit where we worked with individuals with identity struggles after unexpected DNA discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
And so identity, family, restructuring, figuring out who am I, whether it's through family or through faith, that's kind of been the story of the last several years of my life. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Rubelet, and I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, which is like the Vatican of evangelicalism, and was pretty immersed in that culture there. And so in and out of like Christian school and homeschool within that. And so if you know Colorado Springs, you have a lot of Christian celebrities and stuff. So I was there with like their kids and stuff. I grew up in a church probably pretty similar to the world Rebecca was in. So IFB, IFCA circles. So Bob Jones, Pensacola. And I experienced a lot of abuse. It's highly authoritarian, really legalistic. And I was also sexually abused in that context. And kind of carried it for a while. One of the hard things was kind of after that season of kind of intense sexual abuse, kind of when it stopped, my parents separated and divorced. And within that context, it wasn't the norm. I mean, I can't think of really any kids that had divorced parents. And so that became the crisis of the family. And I just kind of stuffed down all of my experiences. And in my 20s, through kind of a crisis, I left Bible college and just deconstruction hit hard. A couple years later, I realized in a moment with a conversation with a guy at coffee who had kind of a similar story upbringing, and he was 30 years older than me. I realized that I was going to be in the position he was in if I didn't seek help. And so I opened up about my abuse in that moment, and I realized through counseling that deconstruction, yes, a lot of it was kind of walking through theology and the cognitive side of things, but it really was me when I went into religious spaces. It was really everything about me and my body and who I was, saying, stop, you're not safe, question all the things. And so that was in my mid-20s where kind of I came to that reality and worked through a lot of that. And of all things, I was a professional musician, and my community growing up in Colorado Springs kept me in churches quite a bit. Within churches, I was a worship leader, whether contracted or a contracted musician or on staff, until eventually I became a pastor. And so I am currently in the Phoenix area. I'm a pastor, but I'm also a dedicated advocate. And so it's interesting because some of the world, if you're familiar with the Phoenix world here at churches, it's kind of a wild west, and we have some figures here that I would say are not healthy individuals. And so sometimes circles that I've been invited in, when they find out what I say, they don't invite me anymore. And it kind of feels, like I'm throwing rocks at them a little bit, and love being a part of this network and working things out and helping people, walking with people. But also, I think one of the unique things being a pastor is I could speak the language of pastors and get in spaces that I think some people aren't able to get into. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And Luke.
Hey. Hi. Thanks for having us. I am in Indiana. I was born and raised, lived most of my life here in Indiana. I am a Hoosier. Hoosier daddy. My daddy is a preacher. And I'm a preacher's kid, have been my whole life. I was born into it in every way you can be. And, it started in small home meetings. And then, it grew over time into like Elks Lodges and then high school gymnasiums. I've always been a part of basically an evangelical fundamentalist, non-denominational, charismatic Christian movement. So there was speaking in tongues and pew jumping, so to speak. We didn't have pews. We had folding chairs most of the time. At the age of 14, I went on my first short-term mission trip with my dad to Haiti, and subsequently went on lots of trips all around the world, went back to Haiti quite a bit. And by the time 2009 rolled around, I actually moved to Haiti with my wife and 3 of our kids. By that point, I had become, I was into my own deconstruction. I am today, I identify as an agnostic. I don't see that as the same as an atheist. A lot of times when you take the survey, they put agnostic / atheist, they group them together. I see a big difference between the two, but I'm one of the ones in this group that I've said to Rebecca on several occasions, "Are you sure you want me here?" And she's insisted, and I actually am in a little way, in that sense, kind of proof of concept that this group really isn't about creating a same mirrored echo chamber. Like, there is differentiation between us. Obviously, each of us are different in our own ways. But spiritually, I probably bring a little more of that. When I was in Haiti in 2009, we were there to start a film school by that point. So I've been in film and television for 30 years. That's been my profession. I went to a Christian school through 12th grade. I went to a Christian university. And right out of college, I went straight to work for Bill and Gloria Gaither. I've directed, I think the number is like 33 of the Gaither Homecoming videos.
Get out of here.
Then I went to work for Ray Boltz for about 4.5 years. He's the guy that did Thank You and Watch the Lamb. And so I was definitely in it for just so much of my life. When we were in Haiti in 2009 doing this film school thing, Haiti's a hard place to do a lot of things. And so we were kind of, I wouldn't say we were moving real fast. We were just trying to get our feet underneath us. And then on January 12th, 2010, at 4:53 p.m., this huge earthquake hit around the Port-au-Prince area. It was all over the news. We were in Haiti at the time. And so, very long story short, because I was there and because I was sort of a media person, I sort of self-appointed as a journalist. And I went into the heart of this disaster zone and spent about 4 weeks kind of purposeless. I was self-assigned. I was looking for stories to tell and trying to do some reporting. I was helping some nonprofits tell their story during that time. Everybody was appealing for support. I got PTSD from that and didn't think that was happening, didn't really know what that was. For about 3.5 years, I can say I was really broken. I was a mess. And at one point, my wife and I were in the Dominican Republic, which is on the same island. We were taking a weekend and catching our breath. And that's when she gave me an ultimatum. She said, I'm going back to the States permanently. I'm taking the kids. You can come with us, or you can stay here. If you stay, we're done. If you come with us, you have to get help because something's wrong with you. And of course, at that point, I was very, I'm fine. Everybody else has the problem. It took me about 3.5 years to really take the idea of getting help seriously. But when I did that and started to heal from this post-earthquake trauma that I had, that unlocked a Pandora's box of childhood trauma, which touches on sexual trauma. It touches on trauma that was pre-language at a time in my life where I didn't really have a way to even internally wrap words or ideas or sentences or pictures even around it. Seeing people crushed in the aftermath of the earthquake, I know this now, I didn't know it then, was making contact with an experience when I was very young of myself being crushed, being overpowered, having my airway blocked off, all kinds of stuff like that. And so the process of healing from, I would just call it a natural disaster trauma, unlocked these doors for me that led down this hole. So I made a film about that. I spent 6 years working on a film. It's called What Lies Inside, Healing in the Face of Trauma. It's on all the platforms. I started sort of really being interested in trauma and what is this thing and how is it that it can really affect our lives invisibly. Like, we might not even know it's happening, but it's still wrecking our lives. And so I started looking for opportunities to learn more everywhere I could. I took an online course about religious trauma, in no way, shape, or form thinking that I had religious trauma. I thought my trauma was pretty exclusively physical, sexual, and then this earthquake stuff later in life. And as I took the course, which, by the way, that's how I met Janine and Rebecca. They were presenters on the course, and I started reaching out to people. I was like, I want to know you. As I took the course, I realized, wait a minute, I think maybe I have this, which, to be honest, there have been times on my journey where I've worried, am I an ambulance chaser? Am I just the guy who sees all the traumas and says, "Ooh, I have that trauma. I have that trauma." But the reality, I think one of the things that a person who has a real experience with trauma knows is you actually can't unchoose it. You can't unchoose the effects that it's having on your life. And that's part of the reason you know that you're not choosing to have it. You're not being fake because you can't shake it off. And so then just the idea of religious trauma was new to me at that time. That's what spurred me to reach out to Rebecca and Janine and several other people. We were in contact. Rebecca and I actually talked about doing some things here and there over a period of time. And at one point, I actually said, with respect, I was like, I have this bad habit of getting overexcited about everything and jumping into everything way too soon before I even know people. Can we just like be friends for a while? She totally respected that. And then, I don't know, Rebecca, you can tell me, it might at least a year passed, maybe even more time passed. And at one point she came to me with this thing she was doing with the Religious Trauma Network and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. And so that's kind of how I find myself here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And thank you for sharing that. And I mean, 4 stories of trauma back to back is a lot to process and a lot to digest. And I'm really grateful for each of you sharing it with us. I'm curious to hear as we move forward the work. And I think, Janine, you said it first, that the healing is the point, that we're not meant to sit in it. We're not meant to stay in it. And it's such a big part of what we're trying to do as well, is to notice at all that something is off. And Luke, like you're saying, it's like pre-verbal. Stuff happens to us before we even know how to express it or notice it or call it not normal, to give it a name and figure out what we want to do with the thing instead of just living with it every day for the rest of our lives, right? So I think it's a great segue to right into what you're doing now.
Well, Luke found me. Like he said, I was presenting on a religious trauma event online. And I got an email from this guy who just says, "Hey, I'd like to connect." I'm like, okay, all right, let's try this. And so we talked or emailed a little bit or talked. And then I realized he's pretty legit. And I may be speaking for everyone here, not just myself, I hope. When you've experienced deep traumas, there's a trust issue. When leadership has hurt you, when it's your own families who've harmed you, when it's the people that were supposed to protect you, guide you, direct you, be your spiritual leader, be your physical leaders, whatever it is, when they're the ones who've harmed you, you have trust issues. And I think that's what Luke was experiencing. And I was, back at him is like, who are these people? Who is this guy? Can we trust each other? And so there's a little bit of this, let's take time. And like Luke said, I think it was about 2 years from the time we met to the time we finally agreed to do something together, because we have to build that level of trust in who the individual is, how they respond to situations, because we've had that trust broken on several different levels. And that's what led us with Janine, with David. It's been the same story. We've had to get to know one another. We've had to see each other's work. We've had to have phone conversations and Zoom calls and really see and the goal was never at the beginning for the 4 of us to do something together. It just kind of organically happened when we realized we can trust one another. We're on the same page. We all are purposing for ourselves to heal first. And we also want to help others. And so that's the difference for me with Religious Trauma Network. I started seeing all of these problems out there. And there's a lot of problems out there. But I wanted to be somebody who provided a solution. I didn't just want to yell and scream. I wanted to actually step up and say, we might make mistakes. It might get messy, but we want to help provide solutions.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led me into, we need to do something. And I can't do it on my own. This is too big for me. And I don't think one person should be doing this all by themselves. So how do we do that? And that's kind of where the concept of Religious Trauma Network started. And then here we are today.
That's amazing. So what is it? I love that because, one of the things we're constantly trying to do is to provide really practical solutions for things. So for you, for the Religious Trauma Network, tell us, what is the point? What are you guys hoping to do? And I don't know who wants to be the person to start that conversation.
Well, I'll jump in and then anybody else can fill in where I left out, what I left out. So the basics of Religious Trauma Network is we do want to provide resources, education, and community for individuals who have experienced religious trauma in any setting, not just Christian evangelical. You may have experienced religious trauma from any form of faith, spiritual, or religious background. So that's one thing that we'd like to do that's a little different than some of the organizations out there, because as I've been in this world for many years, I've realized it's not just Christians, it's everywhere. And so we want to provide that education, support, community, the resources for individuals, but also for professionals, whether you are a counselor, a pastor, a coach, whatever it might be, something that can help educate you and or bring community to you as well. So if you jump on our website, you'll see we have core values that we have listed down. This is kind of our core of who we are, what we're doing, how we operate. We have social media guidelines so that it's a safe, healing, supportive space online. And that's kind of our quick basis. But also, we want to be a space that's for anybody. Our agreement, our core is we all have experienced religious trauma. Where we're going now, the tools, the resources that we're using on this healing process, that might look different. But we all have the common background of religious trauma, and we can agree on that this caused great harm. I was hurt because of this teaching, this idea, this system, this gave me great wounds. And so where we go from there, that's an individual's choice. And especially people from cult backgrounds or coercive religious environments, we're told what to do. We're told what to believe. We're told who we're going to be. As a woman, I was given my identity. I was told you're going to be a wife, you're going to be a pastor's wife, you're going to be a mom, you're going to be a piano teacher, and that's who you are. And so part of this is not telling people who they have to be, what they have to believe, but it's empowering individuals to learn how to make those choices, to process things on their own, while we are this network of people here to support you, not judge you, but provide tools and resources and help you make those choices for yourself.
I did notice that value of empowering and really came through in our last meeting where we were trying to tackle some things. It's like, no, we want to help people, empower them to make those decisions. We don't want to make it for them. So we keep kind of coming back to that, growing up in kind of the environment I was in, not only myself, but my friends. I saw so many things that were just handed to them. And we want to help people say, like, no, this is how, here's some resources, some questions you could ask, but go walk the journey. And there's people that I'm walking with, people each one of us are walking with personally as well. And so I think our heart is to see kind of that happen, but from a place of like empowerment. Let us help you with questions you can ask, but this is your journey.
I was so inspired by these three people that they really could make a difference. And I think one thing that's so unique is that each of us already have our own world that we're serving, walking with people. My take on it is different from Rebecca's, from David's, from Luke's. But we came together because we wanted a place where we showed collaboration. But that is the core, as was said, that is the core, is that we've all experienced religious trauma. But what we are out in the world trying to do is each of us completely different. And then we come together and we try to develop resources and to show what it looks like for there to be collaboration and to have conversations. And I think that it's an example of how people can come together with a common story, even though the stories are different, with a common harm, and work together to do good in the world. And at the same time, not lose our identity in that we can each continue to go out and do, which what I go out and do is very different from anyone else, and the same is true. And I think that's what we need to see, is we need to see how collaboration is the answer. So I'm so honored to be part of this and to kind of hang out with everyone in the midst of my life chaos. They've been such an encouragement to me, but that's what we want to convey, is
Yeah.
how we can support one another.
Yeah. I appreciate, Rebecca, you saying how you're not looking to tell people how to do things. And that's one of the things that we really value as well, is this idea of agency over prescription. So much of abuse has already stripped us of our agency. And so
Yes.
much of abuse has already happened under the control or influence of someone else. So hearing that, I think, will be really helpful for people who are looking for resources to know, like, they're not going to tell me how I need to do it or have to do it. Or Luke,
Exactly.
even your story that you are agnostic and therefore kind of feel like the outsider, but also the proof test, right? Of this can work, that we want to make space for everyone to feel welcome and safe and all of these things. And Janine, I see you, I often call you the great connector, because you've connected me to so many people, including Rebecca and David and lots of others. But I appreciate your desire, like you're saying, to collaborate and to bring people in rather than to exclude. I really have a hard time with places and organizations that treat this arena like it's a zero-sum thing, that it's got to be us or them. And I much prefer the idea of collaboration, that, hey, the more hands, the better. The more tools that we have out there, the better off we'll be. Luke, go ahead.
One of the things I can say experientially about being in this group, we have a chat that we all, it's, you know, on our phones. So we chat with each other. Sometimes it's every night. Like we're just like checking in, and it's not on a calendar that way. We're legitimately supporting one another. And it's interesting because we came together to do the work of being supportive of maybe people that we haven't met yet, you know, the strangers out there in the world. And yet, practically speaking, we are, I feel, for one another, what we're hoping that our openness and our authenticity will be for people who make contact with the Religious Trauma Network. We have had people reach out and ask, what should I do? What can I do? What are the steps? Agency, self-agency is so vital, and it can feel so foreign. If you, like, because I was raised in this stuff, I was indoctrinated. And so I didn't even see the water. I mean, it was the way reality is. And so to be any different, always, I mean, I'll turn 50 this year. It always feels weird to be me being me, because I want to be me the way I want to be me. Because I've always, from day one, been taught that the ultimate virtue is selflessness and the ultimate vice is selfishness. And I'm flipping the script on that. And everything in my body says, like, this feels wrong still. And I've been deconstructed and out of it, you could say, for 25 years probably. I mean, it's not a flip of a switch. There's a gradation that's been happening. But so I love the proof of concept is built into the fact that we are for one another. We hope this network can be for others. And to the question, what should I do? Because again, I said people do reach out and ask, what can I do? What should I do? I think one very practical thing you can do right away is trust yourself and find a group of people, like we've found one another, who aren't necessarily the exact same people on repeat. Like, look for a group of people, and in a way, you can sort of tell that the group is what you're looking for by the fact that it's not a bunch of mirrored images, that there is diversity of some kind or several kinds. And you don't have to go fast, as Rebecca said. Like it can take years to feel like, okay, I'm ready to be all the way in. I'm ready to open all the way up. The answer really is, in a lot of ways, or I should say, it starts with, you can do this. You can do this. If you need a coach or you want a mentor, this, that, or the other, that's fine. But even that is a choice you're making, and you can do this. It's kind of a cool thing that happens when you own your own ability to go through healing yourself. And you also, while you're saying, I can do this, you can say, but I don't want to do it alone. And I don't have to do it alone. And so if you can find a community, you can be doing both. I'm doing it by myself and I'm doing it with a group kind of at the same time. And that's almost a litmus test, I would say, for like, how do I even know how to begin? How do I even know how to begin? I think look for groups, look for organizations that are modeling what they're talking about. A lot of people here have written books. We mentioned those things, but we're not here to platform our work. We're here to say like, hey, it's okay to talk about these things, think about these things, be scared about these things. So I do think that ultimately that key ingredient that anybody looking for, because you may actually have contact with a group that you say like, this might be a place for me, is just check, are you allowed to be you here? If you're not allowed to be you, it might be another control situation. And just
Well, I like how you use the word
careful.
diversity, because that was one of the things that we're looking for. And diversity in age, in experience, in background, in all of the ways that we can have it. And that's why I love our core team, as well as our advisors that we've brought in. When you sit down, when you hear our stories, when you hear our cultural histories, when you hear our educational struggles, when you hear whatever it might be, you begin to realize that these people don't all think the same. They don't all have the same backgrounds, the same family stories. We all are the same in the religious trauma aspect, but our whole core team here are quite diverse when you hear our stories and hear our background. So that is important, as Luke was saying, about finding this community. Is it an echo chamber? Is it everybody is identical? Or are you allowed to be yourself, to ask those questions of that other communities might tell you how to fit in, tell you how you're supposed to think or how to do. So look for that place that is allowing you to do the things that you need to do to heal.
You know, I work with so many survivors and survivors of sexual abuse and of religious trauma. And one of the hardest parts about losing when you deconstruct and is to find community, because you lose your community when you begin to ask questions, when you begin to be your own person, when you and so for me, you know, that occurred to some extent, in great ways sometimes. And so when I talk to people, I say, just watch, just watch, because the community will appear, you know. And I think, you know, sometimes I'm talking to people that do not have a faith background or do not wish to have a faith background. And maybe I say, if you want to call it the universe, you can do that, but it will bring community to you. And so I think that the four of us sitting here are an example of, I mean, there's no real logical way that we all are sitting in this room together. And so when someone says to me, well, I don't know how to, well, you just have to be open and watch and answer the emails that come to you and be willing to step in and find your community. And it's hard. It's hard, as already been said, it's hard to trust. And that maybe that's why I'm the great connector, is that I love that when you call me that, brightness, because it's the thing I love to do the very most. Because so many people, I can see commonalities between them, and I'm like, oh, you need to know so and so, and so all of us need to be doing that for each other. And so because there is community, you can belong in a place, but as long as that place allows you to continue to be yourself.
I just love like I'm a pastor in a space that is probably a little bit more on like the biblical orthodox side of things, and we have people all over the spectrum in this group. And it's very clear that the whole goal is not only to support one another within this, but also each, like Janine said, each and every person that we interact with is at a different space too. And, you know, for my own journey in that, you know, and I'll say this, I don't know if this is helpful for listeners. I remember, because so many things were secretives for so many years that I went through, I first started opening up, I would kind of spill on everyone. It took me a while to find safe people to be like, oh man, they can carry it and be safe with it. And all that. If you're anywhere in those processes and just trying to figure that out, just know that that's normal too. You know, I remember oversharing multiple times in spaces with people, as, you know, throwing, you know, what is it, pearls to the swine, you know. But at the same time, I also remember finding the people as I was journeying, like this group, that man, they could carry it with me. I'm not alone. And what's crazy is it's built a lot of resilience. I was just talking to a friend of I know Rebecca and Janine know him, Sang-Hoon Yu, this past week, and talking about how, I'm a lot more bold and open about my story and helping others because of the resilience, but it's because of the support of others through years of knowing that I'm not alone. There's people I could lean on. And like we've said, not all those people think the same, but I know they have my back. And I think that's been really important.
I love it. I mean, the whole thing is fairly new. What resources do you already have if people are looking for them? And what are you hoping to develop or share this year?
We are fairly new. We started out around Thanksgiving is when we launched of 2024. And we knew it would be a slow launch because of what was going on in each of our lives. But we took about a year to plan, to group, to come together, and then we launched. Our goal is to have this awesome podcast. We've already had one episode, and not one of us will be the host. All four of us will be the host. And not at the same time, but I'll interview somebody. David will interview somebody, that type of thing. And so we have our podcast that we're going to start kicking off more here in 2025. There's also our blog. If you go to our blog, there's writing from us. There's a call out right now over on our social media for guest posts for April, May, and June of 25, if someone would like to submit something and have it published on our blog. But on that blog, if you will notice, there's different resources as well. So if you read, there's one that just launched yesterday for women about purity culture. And so there's actually a physical tool, a resource that you can take to your doctor that we've never seen before out there for women. And so we're trying to create resources that open those conversations as well between professionals, between the survivor or the person who just doesn't have the language to express, this is why I'm struggling or this is why I'm hurting.
You mentioned it, but I just want to say to the professional, the healthcare professional who's like, what is happening? I don't understand this either. Just trying to get the information to multiple parties. And so Rebecca, I'll say you did a really good job with that post, but the goal is, seeing more and more like that, even helping therapists and coaches, getting them some resources as well. But yeah.
And if you'll go to the resource page on our website, you'll see we have things categorized as religious, non-religious, or trauma awareness. And so depending on what you need, we're hoping to be able to categorize those that way: religious, non-religious, trauma awareness. And then if you click our individual bios, you'll see books, podcasts, documentaries like Luke's, those things that we each individually would recommend. And again, they are categorized.
I know we've talked about, there is an interest in possibly doing a film of some kind at some point around the theme of religious trauma, coming out of the world of film and television. That's something that I'm, interested in spearheading with the group. So we're looking to try to bring the message into as many different spaces or into as many different forms as possible. Some people love reading blogs. Some people love reading books. Some people want to watch a movie. So we're trying to figure out ways just to make it acceptable to talk about this in lots of different spaces.
I especially, because I work with Trauma in the Pews, which was intended to help ministry leaders to know how not to re-traumatize the already traumatized. And so, I kind of have this split because I completely identify with and support those who have experienced that kind of trauma. And at the same time, I'm trying. And so I'm hearing that thread is that we're trying to, and Brian, I know your organization is trying to do the same thing where you're trying to support the professionals and you're trying to support also the people who have been harmed. And sometimes that's a difficult mix.
Yeah.
Right? Because to help one side feel heard, to feel seen, sometimes it makes the other side feel like you're taking sides when you're not taking sides. You have to address both sides. And so I know that I posted something a few days ago, and one of my readers said, well, you didn't talk about this in here. And I said, no, because that wasn't the point of this little piece. But if you look at everything I do, I address it all. And so I think that that's one thing. And David and I kind of have that commonality of trying to work with the pastors and churches and ministry leaders with our resources. It's a collaborative effort with different emphases so that we are able to help not only those who could prevent future harm in ministry situations, but also to help those who have been harmed. It goes both ways. And so that's one reason I was excited about being part of this group, is because we're trying to do, and we're emphasizing healing. Let me just say that one more time.
Yes. And we've talked about a million different things. We have this huge vision, but we also are recognizing that we need to start small. We need to keep the healing aspect, just like you do, Brian. That healing aspect is at the center. And we'll kind of organically see where it leads. We do have this strategic plan where, okay, this is what we think will happen. And, we think this is going to come next. But we've all been around nonprofits and churches and things long enough to know that we need to be at a pace that we can maintain collectively as well as individually, but not bite off more than we can chew right from the beginning, and just organically and methodically keep moving forward. And our little slogan is healing forward together. And that's what we're doing as the four of us, as well as we hope that spills over into online and wherever, and the people we meet, everyone can join us in that healing forward together.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe let's close with going around, and I'd love to hear the 4 different perspectives or thoughts on what do you think healing looks like? What would it feel like to feel healed?
So I'm going to start, and Brian, I love being interviewed by you because you just ask the best questions. It's like every time I do something with you, I'm like, oh, good. What questions will Brian ask? Oh, see, because I've written so much on what healing looks like, and it's kind of morphed over the years, right?
Yeah.
When I first started healing, I had kind of this rosy idea of what healing would look like. And then I began to understand trauma better, and I understood that the harm that was done to us lives inside of our bodies, and that it is a very physical healing that has to take place for me to be able to walk into a church and not completely dysregulate the instant I walk in through the door, but that is in my body. I can't just think my way out of that. It has to be in my body. And so it's interesting because yesterday, I've spent 10 years healing, and I'm in the midst of like maybe the most stressful situation that I've ever been in my entire life right now. And I went to make a phone call, and all of a sudden I went, I am peaceful in the midst of chaos. People are always asking, how are you, Janine? How are you doing? I mean, thank you. Everybody's concerned about me. And honestly, as hard as this is, I can't imagine where I would have been in the days when I would have felt like my son came and spent the day with us yesterday. And he said, at one point we would have thought God had brought this on you to somehow build your character or something. Right. And I'm like, ick. I'm in the fire and God is walking with me. And again, because of our backgrounds, we've been told that healing will look spiritual. That if we have truly healed, then we'll be back in church. Yeah. We'll be doing all the things that we've been told to do our whole lives. We will be more spiritual. And I realize that does not define healing. Healing is developing a secure sense of self in who I was created to be, and to have the tools and the agency to make my own choices, and to have peace in the midst of chaos.
I went through a process I shared in my 20s, but Probably one of the hardest times where I was in, panic attacks almost every day was when I moved to Arizona from California back in the end of 2019. I left a really horrible, tumultuous situation where I was like the only full-time pastor on staff of a church that my brother-in-law hired me, and then he got fired, and I was there for like 10 months afterwards. There was a lot of, just my whole world felt like it was falling apart. And so I was even drinking too much, like a whole bunch of stuff. And when I realized I needed something else and I needed to heal, at that point, I didn't have language for trauma at the level in which I do now. And so, like Janine said, I started, what did I do as a worship leader? I started playing all those songs. This is how I fight my battles, try and get in that space, thinking that that's all I needed to do is like worship through it and pray through it. And as I still believe that those practices are important, but it wasn't until I realized, and there was a awareness within my body of where it was carrying, what my body was doing, how that then affected my thoughts. And so as I've healed, it's not that I don't get dysregulated. It is that I'm aware. I'm like, I know what my arms feel like now. I know what different things are happening, sensations that are happening in my body as I'm dysregulated or as I'm running down that path and knowing how to breathe, these things that I never knew because I just thought I could worship through it and I thought I could just kind of pray through it. So that's been huge for me, is to be really aware of what my body is doing, how my for me it's my arms. I don't know why it's like this tingling sensation. I know, I need to sit, different things that I know my body needs in those moments, get in a glass of water, like things like that. And that's been huge for me. One of the things is, in 2008, I've written about this a few times. 2008, I went to the church that my grandparents attended for Christmas and just had this crazy, I was in the middle of a pew, couldn't get out, was dysregulated as all get out. And a couple years ago, I went to my grandpa's funeral there, and the experience was just way different, to where I was able to be present. I was able to be present with my family and present with people. And all the steps taking to take care of myself, to get support, to know what my body needs, to know I had the permission to step out if I had to step out, those sort of things, the awareness, the plan and strategy of decisions I could make for myself, those sort of things just put me in a different place. And those are things for me, not that I don't get dysregulated, but I've learned what my body does, and I've learned how to get what I need for myself. Mm-hmm. That's been key to know that I've walked through some healing.
I think something I'm hearing in both of those answers that definitely connects with me is, in a lot of ways, healing is as unique as being traumatized can be. And it really can have everything to do with how you were hurt as to how you heal. When I was working on my film about healing from trauma, it's literally in the name, healing in the face of trauma, I did come into contact with sort of the difference between healing and recovery. And then I would add maybe another word, like construction. In a sense, I used to think of healing as like we're stopping the bleed. If you, for example, were to lose a leg in a tragic accident, healing would be getting to the point where you can survive into the future because you're not in a life-threatening situation anymore. You've healed to the degree that you can move forward. You're not going to get that leg back. And so recovery can be, how do I recover in that case? An ability to move around through the world in a way that works for me. But if you've been, for example, indoctrinated, if you've never been allowed to know parts of yourself, if you've never been in contact with the idea of choosing things or having opinions that are yours, knowing what you love or don't love, sometimes there's not even a thing to recover. There may be an essential innocence that's in there that you might be able to recover. But sometimes recovery is like, I didn't have something taken from me. I never had it. And so their healing can also include an element of creation, of doing something that's never been done for yourself before. And so, and I love this because you're seeing it even in our answers, how none of us are actually correcting the other. All of this just kind of piles on and it all sticks together and it adds richness and complexity, which to me, I interpret as, the traumatized part of me, which is still a very real part of me. David pointed out how, there were times where he couldn't go into a space, and then he noticed later, after some period of healing, that he could navigate things in ways that he didn't used to be able to. I still, to this day, will be triggered in ways that connect to my earliest trauma. The difference is not, am I triggered anymore? The difference is, am I able to, instead of reacting, just this knee-jerk impulsive reaction, am I able to respond? Yep. And oftentimes the healthiest, I would call it, way is to respond in a way that I mean to, that I want to, that I agree with myself about as I'm doing it. And so I would even encourage people who are asking that question to let go of any need for there to be a right answer, and understand that the answer can be as unique as you are. And because you do have agency and you are allowed to have opinions and figure out, well, I like this. This really worked for me. Or, everybody tells me that EMDR is the way to go. EMDR didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And I have theories as to why that may be the case. Maybe I had a bad practitioner. Who knows? Maybe I was in a bad place. But for a while, I felt bad that didn't work. And everybody calls it the miracle cure in a lot of ways. And you just got to be willing to go, hey, look, there are no rules here. There were no rules when it came to how I was wounded. And there don't have to be rules. I would maybe add some safeguards. I don't want to hurt other people.
Sure. I
don't want to hurt myself, these kinds of things. But inside of that, some of those very practical frameworks, it's kind of like, be an artist. Be an artist with your healing. Find it, figure it out, lean into it, and explore.
So I think it was the, schoolgirl romantic idea of healing means I never hurt anymore. That's what I thought. So as a new mom who was recovering from a traumatic birth story, struggling with the questions of, does God even exist? Hurting so bad as I finally realized how I grew up wasn't normal. It was abusive. When this happened to me, that was wrong. I thought that, okay, when I get through this, I'm not going to hurt anymore. And that's not the case. But what it means for me, healing is self-awareness. It's like Luke was mentioning, we were taught that, selfishness is the ultimate wrong and self-sacrifice is the ultimate right. I didn't know what self-awareness was. I thought that was sin. I thought that was a bad New Age word that we couldn't use and we couldn't explore. And I've begun to understand that the self-awareness is the why. Why, when I walked into that room or smelled that smell or saw that color of lipstick or shirt, why did my body tighten up? Why am I having these physical reactions where my face and my hands are starting to swell up? Because I don't feel safe right now. Like, why is my body responding in physical ways? Why am I shutting down? Why am I getting angry? Why am I wanting to retreat and just go in a dark closet and sit? Why am I? And so that self-awareness of the whys for me is the healing. So yes, we do respond in ways that we are choosing now, but it is not this great mystery anymore of what is happening to me. Why am I sick? Why am I falling apart? Why can't I walk in that church? And I still remember the moment when we were visiting a new church after moving to a new city, and we were up in the balcony because Rebecca always wanted an exit strategy. I wanted the door right there if I needed to get out. But I remember literally feeling that somebody started with each individual toe and was wrapping me in saran wrap as tight as they could. That's the sensation that I felt starting at the bottom until it finally got to my shoulders. And once it got up to my neck, I just had to leave. I was like, I'm suffocating. I'm going to die. And so those feelings, I couldn't express why. I didn't know why. I would come home from church and fall apart for 3 days and couldn't get out of bed. And so healing for me has been understanding my body, understanding my triggers, understanding that I can, if I'm feeling anxious, I can pop a, little one of those nerd candy things in my mouth, nerd clusters, that's the name. And it's sour, and I can trigger, you can help me like regulate my body. And it's not that it's going to be perfect. It's not that I'm going to respond every time the way I would prefer it, but it just means that healing is this awareness that I have of what is happening, why it's happening, what's gotten me there. Or if I don't know, I can manage this. I have the resilience to get through this. Maybe this is a new thing for me, but I know that now I have the ability. I have the smarts. I have the strength. I have the whatever it takes to get through this next thing. And so it's not that we don't hurt anymore, because we are. And I did this presentation once called Band-Aids, Stitches, and Scars. Because at first we think we can just slap Band-Aids on our wounds or on our hurts or the things that bother us, the stuff that we notice was wrong with a situation or an experience. But quickly we see Band-Aids don't do anything. So we jump into stitching it. Like, okay, let's go deeper. Let's dive into surgery. Let's cut this out. Let's, whatever it might be. But finally, that last stage is there will be a scar. That's why we're all here together, because we all have the same experience of religious trauma. Luke's experience was charismatic. The Charismatics and the Catholics were going to hell. It was only this Independent Baptists that were going to heaven. So we each have this different experience, but yet we have these scars too.
Yeah.
And so that's how I view healing, that it does still hurt, but I know I can make it. I have the tools I need for myself. And then that advocacy part comes later for me. Sometimes people jump into advocacy when they're still in that Band-Aid or stitching up stage, which may be helpful for sometimes, for some people, for the people they're helping, for that person. But for me, advocacy needs to come after I see the scar and I understand what happened. So there you have it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I love hearing, like you're saying, the diversity of answers, and that it's non-prescriptive. It's not Luke, even you saying that EMDR didn't work for you. I just met with a client yesterday who told me the exact same thing. It's like, didn't do a thing for me. And I think it actually made me worse. And so recognizing that there are no silver bullets for healing, but I do hear a lot about connection and community. I'm hearing a lot of this real need for embodied work that helps me to recognize the signs of what's going on. And I think, Luke, it was you that even saying, like, this whole idea of like, if my leg is severed off, there is the healing work, but there's also the recovery, and then even the reconstruction afterwards that happens. And there's so much good work being done. And I'm looking forward to the resources that you guys will be offering and that we can point people to say, what does it look like to name the thing that happened to me, and what do I do with it going forward?
I just want to reiterate what Rebecca said earlier, that we do have an open call where we are looking for more voices to say things, to write things in the same, so theologically or spiritually, you could say, I am not on the same page with my three counterparts here in many, many ways. Right. And yet, despite that being true, both in our group texts that we do, which has nothing to do, like, that's not forward facing. Nobody's ever going to see that. That's between the four of us. But in those text exchanges, and then in the content that I see my three counterparts putting out through the network, I am constantly making contact with their ideas. And I'm like, you know what? That is really helpful to me. Even though, like, David may be saying something from his perspective as a pastor, there's a part of my brain that goes, a pastor wouldn't have anything to say that I need to hear. And David proves that that's not true when he's putting out stuff. And I'm like, doggone it, like, that's really helpful. I needed to hear that. Sometimes I needed it for myself. Sometimes I needed to hear a pastor saying that thing, because I've only heard pastors saying these other hurtful things. But the thing I'm interjecting here is, we're just four people. As Janine said, in a lot of ways, there's no good reason why we're together in terms of, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We fully expect and believe that there are more people out there. We're not necessarily asking for new founders for the organization, but we are very much really open to hearing other voices, other experiences. If you wanted to write something that was a blog that's just full of questions, that you don't feel safe asking anywhere. You just want your blog to be questions, send it to the website, and the group of us will look at things. We do have certain things we're looking, like we won't just let anything through because we are looking out for, we're not looking for people to write, like, here's how you do it all the time,
volatile things.
But we really do want to really emphasize how much, like, the network isn't just us or our advisory panel. It's the people we haven't met yet. It's the people who haven't made contact yet. And we are hungry and eager and ready to start hearing from all of you. And in the same way I heard Janine and Rebecca on an online training, and I reached out, if you're hearing this and anything that any of us are saying, and Brian, I'm guessing you would feel the same way. If people hear this and hear something you say and feel like, man, that Brian guy gets it, you would want them to make contact. And we feel that way too. So please, 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 coming back to that you have agency thing, this is your moment. If you're hearing things and if you're feeling a spark, like, somebody in that group gets me, either reach out to us as individuals, or if you want to say things or write things, contribute those and submit those to our network. And we will do our best to get voices out there and to push these new ideas and out of the box thinking. That's what we're really excited about.
I love it. So if people want to reach out, where should they go?
Our website is religiostraumanetwork.com, or we are also on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you. So we'll have those links in the show notes for everyone. If you want to reach out, if you want to offer a blog post, if you just want to go ask questions, we'll have those links below. Rebecca, Janine, David, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Brian. We love your work too. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the resources that they're going to be able to provide for us moving forward. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, be sure to follow them and say thanks for being on the show. You can find links, accounts, and all the things in the show notes. As a 501c3 nonprofit, our work is made possible by our generous donors. If this has been helpful to you, consider joining us today at brokentobeloved.org/support. Coming up on the show, we have Jeff Chu, Michael Cusick, Hillary McBride, and lots more. Subscribe or follow the show to get new episodes automatically. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review or share with your friends. It helps us so much. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope it's been helpful. Here's to moving toward healing and wholeness together. I'll see you next time.